Hi everyone, this is Justine and welcome to Investigative Selfism. Today, you guys, I want to talk about habits. And why today? Why this topic? Well, on a personal level, I have to say I have recently moved to a new country. I am in Amman, Jordan, recording from here. I also live on a very steep street because many streets are steep here. So I'm just sort of waiting for cars to pass, pausing this podcast, not to record some weird sounds for you, but hey, it might happen, and I hope that you see it as something very human, something very human. But so why habits? I thought two things. Well, one, every time I moved to a new place, and that would happen quite often in my life, I have to say, I'm very happy to say that, I would notice how I would keep certain habits, and these habits would keep me not just sane. I think many things can keep us sane, but also provide this sense of comfort. Something that you can rely on, that something that you can trust, and you know that wherever you go, you can still do certain things. So I'll talk quickly about that. And then, in addition to being something that can give us comfort, but also I'll talk about habits as something that can really form our identity, or the other way around. When we have a certain identity established, these habits are maintained very naturally because, hey, habits. But so let me go a bit more deeply into this. And one thing I have to say, like a disclaimer, there's so many ways how we can look at habits and what kind of habits we could be talking about. For example, high performance habits that Brendon Burchard, a guy who I really like and who's very famous, really, I don't think he needs an introduction. So something he has studied, he has conducted an amazing study on, something he has summarized in his book, High Performance Habits. Oh my God, what a read. So that could be one topic already. Another topic could be how something that we do becomes a habit. And I will link very quickly to one of my articles where I talk about neuroassociation, something that neurolinguistic programming talks about, and it's really cool. But so today, habits of comfort and habits that shape our identity. Of comfort, I think it's pretty obvious, and this is something I think we can all relate to. I think it's really sweet, if anything, to analyze our habits and see what we have kept in our lives, something that is hopefully healthy and has been providing us with a sense of control, sense of comfort as well. And I have to say, for me, it has been at least two things. So from many years ago, and this is not entirely healthy, I would prepare my, poor student lunch, and I would sit in front of my laptop and I would eat whatever I would be eating there, and I would watch the Colbert Report. Yeah, so since my college times, I would love it. That was such a nice thing to do. And yes, guys, if you live with your families, don't eat by a screen, eat with your loved ones. But, if you're like a student in your room, I think, for me at least, it was so nice. And hey, that was already 15 years ago. And since then, I've lived in, several other places, I can say. And I would still do that. And it's great. And this habit, it brings so much joy to my life. And if I eat something that is actually healthy, I claim that it is healthy. So that's one of them. And the second one is something that I've developed a bit later in life because I was not moving much at all for the first 25 years of my life. I refuse to see it as embarrassing because I've changed. Now for me, exercising is a part of my identity, is a part of my routine. And so the past years, wherever I would live, I would go on my longer or shorter, sometimes very short runs. Because, if you have, obviously, an able body, running can be quite accessible, doesn't need much, just get good shoes and go, maybe some nice music to listen to, and, you're fine. So I would do that, and I think every time I would move to a new country, I would go on that first run, and in this way, I sort of claim the city, I claim the place. So I think it's an example of a nice habit to have that brings some calm and, once again, a sense of control, really, to your life. I know we all have different habits, so I wanted to share with you what mine have been. And oh my goodness, it would be so interesting for me to see what your habits have been. So I will ask these questions in my social media posts. So anywhere where you can respond, I would love to see responses. But so this is on comfort, habits of comfort. But then I think what's more interesting perhaps is to see what habits not only stay the same, but which habits we develop later in life, why, how, and how they serve us. And the concept I want to explore quickly today is something that I've enjoyed so much. It's something that has opened the gates of my creativity. It's this and a couple of other frameworks, really. and lots of working on myself in general. But this is one major thing. And this is what Seth Godin, an author, he's been blogging for a long time, but also he is an author. He's released many books, just an overall nice guy. And I recommend just watching some interviews with him. He's a good speaker as well, but he writes really well too. It makes sense. He's been writing for some time. And in one of his books, I believe that's still his most recent book, The Practice, Shipping Creative Work, he talks about how I see it in a way, flipping the way we see what is needed for us to be creative, for us to be producing something that we would like secretly or openly to produce. So what he says in that book, and I'm obviously oversimplifying, and please just read the book, it's great. It's such a pleasure to read. And he says how basically we don't do something creative because we're creative. We are creative because we create. So for example, we don't write because we're creative. We're creative because we write. And obviously it's not just about writing, it's about anything that you would like to produce and release into this world, anything that requires you to show up, to be vulnerable, to put yourself out there. So that can be various things. It doesn't have to be, oh, this masterpiece of a song that I think I've been creating, but I'm not sure if I want to release it. It can be anything. But that kind of flip, he says, if you're putting your trust somewhere, don't put your trust in the outcome, because that's the definition of something vulnerable. That's the definition of something artistic, that the outcome is not guaranteed. If you do A, it doesn't guarantee that B will happen. Hence the risk, hence the vulnerability. But if you're putting your trust somewhere, put it in your practice. Say, you know what, whatever happens, I will show up. For example, I will write daily. I will paint every morning. I will sit down and, code every evening. So whatever it is for you, it's about you doing the work. It's about you committing and creating that habit. You have to make yourself do it. Schedule it even, maybe. And by doing it, this is how you establish that identity, let's say. So you can say, whatever happens, I will do this thing. For me, for example, that has been producing actually not one, but 2 podcasts. This year I started with 0 podcasts, then started one, and then decided to start another one, and decided to write a bit more and just really put myself out there. I didn't have that before, I didn't have that habit. And honestly, very rarely in my life, even though for someone who loves to write, I claim, very rarely I would commit. I can say actually that I've never committed very seriously. Yes, I was working with some organizations, writing articles for them, so I had external deadlines. But to see writing, or in this case now, creating my podcasts as a commitment, as an artistic commitment, I've never had that. So I'm very thankful to Seth's ideas, really. The way he once again sort of reverses the flow of how we can see, habit, identity, what comes first. And obviously we can say, well, one reinforces the other one. As a quote that I've put in one of my articles, identity fuels action. I think that's very true and it's a very cool quote. But also, our habits that we choose to consciously form can also fuel our identity. So remember, you don't run because you're a runner, but you're a runner because you run. Running is the thing that makes you a runner. You're a writer only if you write, not if you think about it, not if you plan it, not if you discuss it with your friends. You're a writer if you write. Establish your identity. Create new habits. For me, it's fascinating. And obviously the way I'm summarizing these ideas and trying to sort of bring other ideas into this podcast, it's definitely not any kind of a full picture of like what can help you. If there is something that you wanted to do, you've been wanting to do, I think this is one of the very nice frameworks that you could be using to, break that writer's block, or, to finally start creating something. And as importantly, start sharing it with the world, right? That's a very scary part because the outcome is not guaranteed. But you create the habit, you put your trust in the practice, and you continue, and you continue, and you continue. So these are a couple of ideas on habits. And I think it's beautiful how, in the end, it's a mix, right? It's a mix of those old habits that serve us. There are probably old habits that don't serve us, and we have to re-examine them. Probably some old habits tied to our old beliefs about ourselves, old limiting beliefs about ourselves. For example, if I think that I'm lazy, I'm not going to form a habit of exercising in the morning because look, I'm lazy. It's convenient for me to keep that belief because if I have that belief, I'm not going to make new habits. And I can say why I'm not making them because, my belief that I'm lazy, and that's it. End of story. Easy. It's easy to have a difficult life, right? So once again, habits. Today, a couple of questions. One, what are the old comforting habits that you have? Something that really helps with your mental health, something that helps you to connect to others or yourself. Another question, what are the old habits that don't serve you anymore? A good question as well. And then the last question, is there anything that you would love to do, something you would like to see as part of your identity, but you never dare to commit, you never dare to establish a habit? And if you do have something like that, what is that? And could you just start doing that? Instead of waiting for someone else's permission, could you just go for it? Could you say, you know what? I might not be a writer officially, but if I don't write, I am definitely not a writer. What's that saying? You cannot edit a blank page. You have to start somewhere. And a chilling idea is that you will probably start small. And I have to say, I'm a big fan of that. I've started my creative projects very small. I've recently restarted my career completely. Started very small, role-wise, financially as well. But we have to start somewhere. And as Seth says, establish your identity by doing the work. So guys, thank you so much for listening. This was a long one. Continue with your healthy habits, establish new ones that serve you, and I'll see you next week.